It's time to sit back, relax, and listen to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life will inspire, motivate, and empower you. Live your best life now. Listen, learn, think, and decide. Change your attitude, change your life. And now, here's your host, Joan Herman.
Welcome to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. You're listening to us in your neighborhood from coast to coast and around the world. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Joan Herman, author, speaker, and your host. Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life brings you interviews with some of the most inspirational and influential people in the world. It's our goal to educate and empower you so you can live your best life now. Thank you for taking time for yourself, and thank you for letting us be a part of your life. We have another great show for you today. Today's guest, Mike Robbins, had a life that many little boys dream of. Drafted by the New York Yankees directly out of high school, Mike decided to postpone his professional baseball career until he finished college. After a stint at Stanford, he began life in the minor leagues as a pitcher with the Kansas City Royals organization, where he played for 3 years until an injury benched him for good. This devastating disappointment changed his life in wonderful ways that he could have never imagined. Mike is the author of 3 books, Focus on the Good Stuff, Be Yourself, Everyone Else Has Already Taken, and Nothing Changes Until You Do. Welcome, Mike. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Joan. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Hey, Mike, when you were young, as I said in the introduction, you were living the dream of most boys, and you were on track to become a professional baseball player with the Yankees.
Yep.
So what made you make the decision to put off playing pro ball and finish your education?
Well, it was great to get drafted out of high school by the Yankees, but both in a practical sense and just, sort of life sense, going to college was really important. On the baseball side, I got an opportunity to play baseball at Stanford, which has one of the best baseball programs in the country. So if you go to a school like Stanford, and unless you get injured, if you play well there, you'll get an opportunity to play pro baseball, which is what ultimately happened to me. So it wasn't a huge risk for me or decision to make. And the other thing that was going on, I had a minor injury to my arm my senior year in high school. So, the reality of going to get my education was really important because what if baseball doesn't work out? The chances are, even if you're really good, as I was, you got to stay healthy, you got to get lucky, you got to, make it to the big leagues. So that decision wasn't quite as hard. Then going to Stanford and then getting drafted out of Stanford by Kansas City and signing, it became a little more challenging after, because then a few years into my pro career, I ended up getting hurt.
So you began in the minors. What was that experience like?
The way it works in baseball, that, a lot of folks listening know this, some may not. You get drafted by a big league team. You don't have any choice over who picks you. Then you sign a contract. And there's actually 6 levels of the minor leagues that you have to kind of work your way up through before you make it to the major leagues. And it's tricky. It's fun. It's exciting. It's interesting. It's challenging, competitive. The biggest competition you're facing is not on the other team, it's on your own team, because, if you do the numbers, there's about 150 roughly players in a minor league organization. There's 25 guys on a major league roster, and depending on the position you play, you're sort of literally fighting with dozens and dozens of other guys for a very small number of spots.
Okay, so you're playing in the minors, and then you get injured.
Yep.
What happened to you, and how long after the injury did you learn that your career was over?
Well, I got injured in the summer of 1997. I was playing out on the East Coast in Wilmington, Delaware, and the night I got hurt, we knew the season was over for me because I hurt my arm really bad. Literally by the time I got home that night, I couldn't even move my arm, maybe 5 degrees in either direction, and my elbow swelled up on me. And what they thought was that I had some bone spurs, maybe that one had gotten loose and sort of created some real inflammation. They sent me back to California. I ended up seeing a doctor down in L.A. who then told me, no, you actually tore the ligament in your elbow, which is very common for pitchers. So I was going to have reconstructive elbow surgery, which is called Tommy John surgery. And, a lot of guys come back from that injury. It's a long process. At that time, it was about an 18-month rehab process. But the thought that I would be able to come back was, potential. But as I got into the process, and then I had some other problems. I had torn some cartilage in my shoulder. It became pretty obvious to me about 6 months into that. I don't think I'm going to come back from this and be able to play. And then ultimately, after a couple of years, and I ended up having 3 surgeries and did lots of rehab and tried to come back. But the Royals released me from my contract, and I just got to a point where I couldn't keep. I was in so much physical pain, and then mentally, emotionally, I was like, I got to move on. I can't keep doing this. It was like banging my head against the wall. So it was hard. It had been my life. It had been my identity. It had been everything that I had focused on, and how I got a lot of attention and sort of what I thought made me a good person, which of course wasn't true, but for a kid and then a teenager and then a young man, it made sense, especially now looking back. I can see why I was so wrapped up in that as an identity.
Well, so as you said, this is something you had worked for your entire life, and it was your identity. So what was it like for you at that time? Did you fall into the victim mentality?
Yes and no, a little bit. I mean, it was difficult on some levels, but I had a couple of early insights that really helped me. I mean, the first big insight, as I kind of look back on the whole experience, and realized when it was going to be over, as disappointed as I was, I asked myself a lot of questions. And one of the questions I asked over and over again was, did I have any regrets? Would I do anything different if I could go back and do it again? And I didn't really, Joan, regret a lot of the mistakes that I'd made or games that I'd blown or the stuff that was really a big deal when I was playing. The only regret that I had was I didn't fully appreciate it while it was happening. Right? I was too busy trying to make it. And it wasn't really until I was done that I could actually say without being arrogant about it, I was like, man, I was really good at that. I wish I would have had more fun. I wish I would have enjoyed and appreciated it more. So that was a big insight. But the other thing that happened for me, and I realized this early on, is I started to go down that victim path. I thought to myself, look, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. I don't know what's going to happen. I was scared. I was confused. But I kind of fast forwarded like 30 years, 40 years, saw myself at 55 or 65 years old and thought I could see myself at the end of a bar drinking, telling stories about how I used to be somebody or I could have been somebody or, and I was like, I don't want to be that dude. Like, I don't want that to be my life. And so I made a commitment to myself that, like, yes, this is painful. Yes, this is scary. I'm not sure if I'll ever be good at anything again like that. I'm not sure if I'll find another dream or passion, but I know that I'm not going to let this define me in my life and have it be woe is me. And, it's not like I never went there. Right? And all these years later, with all the inner work I've done and everything, I'll have a dream sometimes that I'm still playing baseball and, I'm pitching at Yankee Stadium or something, and I'll wake up in the morning and it'll be completely confusing emotionally, and I'll have a moment where I'm like, that didn't actually happen. Bummer. You know what I mean? Like I have to still. So it's not like it. It's like, look, it's like when you're in love with somebody and the relationship ends, and even if it's the right thing, you still might have that dream or that thought or that memory or that. Oh, that was really sweet, or that still hurts a little bit. I mean, being human and moving through life and having things that happen that are disappointing and painful, it's complex and multi-layered for most of us,
Yeah, so you had to go inside and do the deep work. And from that, do you think that we all put too much emphasis on the externals? It's that case of, I'll be happy when I lose weight. I'll be happy when I get the house. How can we get out of that mindset?
It's tricky, because look, it's not that those things aren't important, right? The losing the weight, the getting the house, the making the money, the falling in love. I mean, having a baby, retiring. I mean, whatever the big milestones, the big external stuff, it's not that they're not important. They are important. I just think we put too much importance on them. And I think for most of us, look, we've all had this experience in life. There's some big thing you want to accomplish or achieve, and then you do. And it's oftentimes filled with this mixed feeling of like, hey, that's really exciting, and like, oh, that didn't like fix me. It didn't fill that hole inside of me I thought it would. And then sometimes it's even more deeply disturbing. I think people find this a lot with marriage and with children, for sure. My wife, Michelle, and I have been together for 15 years, and we got a 9-year-old and a almost 7-year-old, 2 girls, and we laugh all the time about it because we look at each other and we're like, wow, we love our life and we love this. And sometimes this is hard or this sucks or like this is not what we thought it was going to be. And we have to remember there's the fantasy of it and then there's the reality of it. So I think that what we want to do in life is have those goals and those external things that are important to us. But remember that even if you lose all the weight, even if you make all the money, you still got to deal with yourself.
Yeah, it reminds me, did you ever see the movie Boyhood? There's a scene near the end of it where the son's getting ready to leave for college, and the mom is sitting at the table crying. And she said, looking back at her life, basically, there was the getting married and going to college and having a baby and sending the kids to school and all of that. And she said, and here I am, and I just thought there'd be more. And I think that that's a great example of not making peace with what you have and not living your life. Like you said, you didn't enjoy or appreciate the moments as you went through them. And then when you look back, it's like, well, wait a minute, here I am, and what's next?
Yeah. Well, and I think, look, And I remember that scene in Boyhood, and it was both so poignant and kind of painful because it's such a metaphor for life that we're assuming and expecting that certain things, certain accomplishments, certain milestones are going to mean something, and they do and they don't. And that's the paradox of life. You know, I mean, there's how many stories do we have to read or hear about from incredibly talented, famous, amazing people? I think of, it's been about a year, give or take, maybe a little more, a little less, since Robin Williams committed suicide.
Yeah.
And he was someone, and I live here in Marin County in the San Francisco Bay Area, not far from where Robin lived. And so it was a big story nationally. It was a big story here locally because of his ties to this area. But I remember thinking about that, and someone who was so gifted and so talented and so successful and so accomplished and so hilarious and all of these things that for us to learn and understand, wow, he had serious demons going on within him, right? That for me, with as much empathy and compassion as I could possibly have, to imagine like this notion that we have, most of us are never, ever in our lives going to be anywhere near as talented and successful and accomplished as somebody like Robin Williams.
Right.
And most of us won't know what the pressure is like to deal with that level of talent and celebrity. However, if we think about that in our own lives, it's like, what are we really chasing, right? We're chasing these things that we think are going to somehow make us happy, when in reality, what we got to do is stop and focus more internally to what is it that I want to experience? How do I want to feel? What do I want my life to be like? Not externally, but internally, because that's a place where we actually have domain, if you will. We have power. We can shift and change, as opposed to thinking, I have to find someone to fall in love with me. I have to make sure I buy this house. I have to fill in the blank, when we give our power away all the time.
Mike, when we see a successful person, we tend to think that he or she has it all together, that this person really has it figured out. And yet, these people struggle with self-criticism and self-doubt, and they have fears. So what do you think these quote-unquote achievers know that we don't? How do you think they move past it?
Well, I think it's a good question. I mean, I think if we look at it, I think there's a level of self-mastery that they've created. Not perfection. They don't have it all together. But I think, again, instead of focusing so much on mastery of task or skill, which we celebrate enormously in our culture, to focus a little more on mastery of self, meaning taking care of ourselves, honoring ourselves, again, doing that inner work, which is essential, not only to achieving, but ultimately to the journey of life, that we're on. Because, again, we've all had that experience in life where we think about times just going for a goal, making yourself miserable in the process, not sleeping, not eating well, treating the people close to you nasty, and all the things that sometimes go on. We get really stressed out. Sometimes we'll justify it by the ends. Well, we got it. Well, we did it. Well, we made the deadline. We whatever. But most of the time, even that achievement, if the process by which we went in order to achieve it was really unhealthy and unfulfilling, we'll take a step back and go, maybe there's another way to do this.
And I think, too, it's also having the willingness to push everything aside and take a risk. Just go for it. I mean, we're talking baseball. I interviewed Jim Abbott, and he told me, one-handed pitcher, pitched no-hitter for the Yankees. He told me when he was on the mound, he was always waiting for someone to find out he didn't belong there. But even everything he had to overcome in his life, he had to do all of the things that you said, and then he had to be willing to put himself out there and take a chance.
Well, I do think that is a big common denominator, is the ability to take that risk. It's ultimately, embracing vulnerability, right? And that, for many of us, is a tricky exercise, because in order for us to achieve anything that's important, in order for us to do anything, to make any change, to really kind of go to whatever that next level is in whatever area of life is important to us, we got to be willing to be vulnerable. And that's scary. And I say this all the time when I'm speaking about authenticity, particularly vulnerability. Like, look, it's way easier for me to talk about and write about authenticity or taking a risk or being vulnerable than it is to actually do that, right? It was like the moments back when I was playing baseball, all those years of playing, and I loved it. But there would be a moment, Joan, right before I would go out onto the mound, almost every time, like the game would be just about to start. In that moment, that was like the most nerve-wracking part, was right before the game started. I would literally look around. I'd look up in the stands, and I'd find some guy sitting up there, he's like eating a hot dog, drinking a beer, sitting with his girlfriend, whatever. I think, I want to be that dude right now, right? Because it was way safer. I could do that, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
I was about to go out on the mound. I had no idea what was going to happen. You know, and in baseball, the feedback's pretty instantaneous. You have a bad game as a pitcher, too. They stop the game and pull you out. It's pretty humbling. So we got to be willing to fall down, willing to make a fool of ourselves. And for a lot of us, particularly the longer in life we go and the more, experience we have, the harder that actually becomes. Because we're trying to save face. We're trying to uphold our reputation. We don't want to look bad or seem like we don't know what we're doing or whatever. And so we don't ask for help. We don't take the risk. We don't try. We don't put ourselves into those situations to make us vulnerable. And that's why that relationship that we have with ourselves is the most important relationship that we have. And for many of us, it's often very negative and critical, and we don't spend a lot of time really nurturing the relationship with ourselves. Because when that relationship with ourselves is healthy and positive and loving, our ability to take risks, our ability to be kind to others, our ability to respond to opportunities or difficulties is so much better.
The book is Nothing Changes Until You Do by Mike Robbins. If you'd like to learn more about Mike, you can visit his website, mike-robbins.com. Mike, in our final moments, what would you like to leave our listeners with?
I think one of the most important things that we can do, again, in nurturing that relationship with ourselves, is to talk to yourself as if you were talking to someone you really love. To really treat ourselves that way, with that sense of kindness, that sense of empathy, compassion, and love.
Mike, thank you so much for joining us today. I wish I had more time. I could talk to you for a much longer length of time, so I really appreciate you being here, and I wish you much success with your book. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
We'll be right back. Hi, this is Joan Herman, host of Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. Did you know that Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life has a free monthly digital magazine that can be read online or emailed to your inbox? Every month, nationally recognized leaders in their field provide information to educate, inspire, and motivate you. We believe in a holistic approach to life, incorporating mind, body, and spirit. Check out a copy of Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life 24/7. Visit cyacyl.com and be sure to tell your friends. Thank you for joining us today. We hope you found the show informative. At Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life, we believe that knowledge is power. Take what you've learned, apply it, and live your best life now. Remember that the information provided are the opinions of our guests and should never replace the advice of a professional who knows your personal situation. If you'd like more information, visit our website, cyacyl.com. That stands for Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. While on the site, listen to past shows on demand, read the digital magazine, and be sure to follow the show on Facebook and Twitter. Until next time, this is Joan Herman. Thanks for tuning in.